Welcome to Home's Room. Just like Homeroom, we start off our day getting together with our homies, swapping stories, even a little kiss and tell action. This podcast contains language not suitable for younger listeners, topics about sex and mental health. Discretion is advised. Our views are our own. Let class begin.
Hey, the right song played at the beginning of the episode this week. So there's that. We're starting off on a better spot than we did before. What's up, Kaitlin?
Not much, Matt. Toddlerhood is not for the faint of heart, but here we are. I'm happy to have some creative time carved out to sit here and have a fun conversation with my homie Matt.
I feel like we could probably do an entire montage of how many times you said toddler life isn't for the faint of heart, or started an episode with like, we're surviving, not thriving, or something like that, and then reference to kids. So there's that.
It's an honest answer to the question, though. And I've had 3 days, 3 days at home with both of them, 4 days at home with one of them. So I promise you someday I'm going to have a different response. I'll have a different report in, but that's just where my baseline is.
Fair. There's that, I guess. So as I guess housekeeping-y, I just wanted to follow up and say I finished April's book, and I think I finished it probably last week. Like, I could have said this last week, but I didn't. But it ties into kind of this episode more than it did last week. So I finished April's book, Desire Makes Me Brave. It was a good read, and I think that if you're looking for something to like kind of make you think a little bit about, or self-reflect a little bit and care about like your desires, definitely is worth the read. I feel like I have a lot of questions for her on the writing side, as well as like just her life in general. But I'm always so like, when I read memoir style books, and like yours, like it does it a little bit, but not as like, not in the same way. Like there's moments where you do it because it's more about like, yours is more about the lessons that you have taken from that now, as opposed to then, where hers is kind of focusing on the feelings from then and how that maybe changed her to now, and like that like discovery in the moment kind of vibe. So for me, it's always like, how do you go back to that memory in that moment and describe something that happened with another person and like remember it in such detail? Like, I got a good memory, but I don't know that I could remember some of the stuff that she like wrote about. And I think that in itself is like a level of storytelling that is like worth the read. And then also like, she kind of has like a similar to me writing style, where like she writes how she talks, but also it's very, I don't want to say fun, but it's like very meta. Like she understands that she's writing a book that has some titillating things about it, that has a little bit of like juiciness to it. And when she talks about that stuff and then goes to something slightly different, she engages the reader by saying, I know, reader, why do like, you want to get back to that story, but we have to talk about this first. And I just think that like that playfulness is what sets certain books apart. And it might not be like, I consider myself a rule breaker when it comes to writing, so it might not be like the correct way or the rules way, but yeah, there's that. Also, today in our timeline, we released the episode of our interview with Sex Reimagined 2 and the Boss Babes series, and I'm really excited because that one was fun. And in that one, you were also dealing with crazy kids. So sorry, unfortunate. However, we conducted that interview very well. And I want to give you a shout out because you came in, asked questions, did what you had to do. And thanks to the power of editing, you would never know that there was a difference when you, if you watch the video version of that one, because that one did release as a video. You watch the video version, like you can see that you're there and then not there, but the audio version, you'd never know. So there's that. So way to be professional in that situation. I'm sure it was very nerve wracking for you, but it shouldn't be, because I got your back, and I'm not going to be like, God damn it, So
thank you, homie. I appreciate it. And you've definitely been there too. For our listeners, there was a chunk of our interview where my 3-year-old was just sitting at the bottom of the stairs while the door that I record in is right at the top of my stairs, just screaming at the top of her lungs because it was not yet bedtime and she wanted to know where I was. So, very embarrassing.
She just loved you, though.
She does love me, but damn. It didn't sound like love. But yeah. I love editing. I love the power of editing. And please let us know what your thoughts are about that interview. That was legitimately one of the most fun interviews I've ever done, like even better than the first time. We walked away from our first Sex Reimagined interview and I was like, Matt, that was so much fun. Oh my gosh, I had a blast. And the second one was even better. So I adore both of those ladies. It is still so foreign to me as somebody who had a upbringing that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, where they're very powerful, independent businesswomen who have very publicly and loudly taken ownership of their sexuality, their sexual identity, but also feel very passionate about starting those harder conversations, but helping other people through those difficult, things that I've had to personally struggle with myself. So I shout out to those wonderful ladies. We love you so much. Thank you for hanging out with us for yet again another hour.
Yeah. Hopefully we have them back on. I will say this is a caveat for like a behind the scenes thing. I posted about it on Instagram. I share our content for promotion purposes. And I love when we get feedback. I love when it works. I love when the like how many people get to see it and people share it to their stories, all those things when that happens. However, I hate when I see our stuff not get seen at all because the algorithm is like, ooh, that's an inappropriate topic. We're not going to push that. So I shared it and within a day it had been seen by 13 people and it had like 3 likes simply because the algorithm wouldn't push it. Then the next day I posted a stupid reel and I don't even remember what that one was. It was, I do remember what that one was. It was, the trend of, and I've been seeing this a lot where it's like a random picture or a random video. And it's like, I Googled best place to eat and I'm mad now because it didn't say you or something. So I was like, how can I do this where it's not going to be like uncomfortable for some people where like it's a clean version of this? And I was like, you know what I'll do? I took a little video and I'm becoming a content creator in that regard where I'm like, I need to take a video to post. So I take random videos or I do random pictures and stuff now. And we were just driving the Jeep with the doors off. So I was like, whatever, I'll take a video and then I'll use it for something later. So I used that video and it said, I Googled best position to sleep in. And I'm mad because it didn't say in your arms. And that one took the fuck off. And, last time I looked, it was at like over 2,000 views or something like that. Like that one did what it was supposed to do. But then the immediate next day, the promotional content for Sex Reimagined did the same thing. And it was like seen by like 40 people, I think, and had like 3 likes. So it's not getting seen because specifically of the content that it is. And that shows it. And it's not just us. There's a lot of people. I kind of network a little bit with other content creators and we talk about stuff like that through messages and they see a lot of it. It sucks because when you're promoting primarily through social media, you really do need all of those things. So when it comes to our reels and things like that we post for promotion, those are that's how we advertise. Mm-hmm. That is the best way to get new eyes on us. So I'm asking you listeners, help us get out of that hole. When you see us post the content that we post, share it with your friends, share it to your stories, comment on it if it's something funny or comment on it if you're excited, whatever you want to do, because we get stuck in a dead hole and it's hard to climb out of it. And it's doubly hard. Again, this is the part of behind the curtains. When you have a reel blow up, usually shortly after that, there's a rebound factor, and then it takes you a little bit longer to gain traction with your other reels that aren't the same kind of content. So we're going to be fighting that uphill battle here in the next few weeks, and I can't wait. It'll be exciting. But beyond that, it's just business as usual here at Holmes Room. We are getting ready to start our Halloween episodes, which is awesome. I shared the cover, since I do covers now for different series, I shared the cover for that with the spooky season logo. So super excited about that. And we got fun, I'm calling it the buddy watch, even though we're not watching it together.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a buddy watch for a movie, and super excited about that. We have hopefully more than one interview, but it's slow going and people are flaky sometimes, so that happens. But if we don't, we're going to come up with some good Halloween-y content for you. And then we got the end of our season, because we're going to wrap up our season. So you people out there, keep supporting, keep listening, keep sharing, all of those things, and ride out the last little bit of this season with us, and let's make it fun. So today, I don't know if it'll be fun, but it'll definitely be a conversation. So
sure will.
So Kaitlin, can you hit us with your most famous line that you say whenever somebody brings up like spicy anything topics? You know what I'm talking about?
The one from high school, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Modest is hottest.
Yeah, so Modest is hottest.
I think
it's so funny.
Matt, I didn't know if you were talking about that one or the one that I say all the time, mostly after we stop recording. I say, we're just a couple dumb idiots floating around on a rock with internet access. I wasn't sure if that was one. No. Modest is hottest.
Yeah, so that's kind of the theme for this episode, is she says it a lot, and I always think it's interesting because, like, when we have people like the ladies over at Sex Reimagine, Dr. Willow Brown and Leah Piper, when we have people like that on, and April Hirschman, like, those are the kind of people that are trying to reach that mindset, is to open up people's minds. And Modest is hottest is, an interesting concept in itself, not because modesty can't be acceptable, and not because you have to be, like, scantily clad everywhere you go all the time, posting it for people to see or anything like that. It's just it becomes a mindset. And I always think it's so interesting because it's so alien and abstract to certain people. And I'm curious, Kaitlin, I gave you a little bit of, I guess, precursor to why I wanted to do this episode, or how I thought you could participate in this episode, and it not necessarily like trample on, your sensibilities. And I'm curious from your side, how you see me and my way of thinking, and how long you think that I've been not modest as hottest in my mind, in my way of like thinking. 'Cause I think that it's super interesting to have a dynamic that we have. And it seems like people have an interesting opinion about me and how willing I am to talk about things. So,
I would say you definitely have. So can we take a step back real quick? Can I just revisit very quickly what Modest is hottest is, and necessarily like,
no, because you have to answer the question, and then we can set up the rest of it. This is a precursor. Okay. That's what I said, precursor.
Okay. I'm gonna say that you maybe had a similar journey as I did. I would say that you growing up where you grew up and how you grew up with your mom and everything. I don't know, with her. You mentioned last week that
Don't tell the story. Don't tell the story. You have inside information. I said without thinking about that inside information, because you already have a little bit of a precursor. Before that, what would you have thought?
Before that, I would have thought that you had a little bit more of a less of a Bible belty upbringing than I did, to be quite frank. Just with the conversations you have, the interviews that you've done that I've helped you with, the topics that we talk about here on this podcast, the way that you bring joy out of sometimes making me uncomfortable, but I never have a problem with it because you're never going to grow if you're always comfortable. But just educated by those few things and the fact that we've been recording for over a year now, I would say that you probably had less of a Bible Belty upbringing than I did.
Yeah. So I think that that's the way that the world kind of makes us think is like, for me, until you say it, I forget that. Like, it's not like front of mind to me that like you are, because like the way I see all of my friends is like, you're just my homie. So like, I'm willing to have any conversation you want to have at any point in time, as long as you bring the conversation. If you're going to be like, hey, by the way, what do you think about this? And then I tell you, and then like, that's the end of the conversation. Then I might not like be excited about the conversation because it's not really a conversation. As you ask me a question, that's when you hit me with the, hey, got a question for you, as opposed to let's have a conversation. But beyond that, like I said, I think it's interesting because for you and the way that you grew up, I have, I guess, questions, but also like, I think giving a little bit more information about your background with the answer to the questions that I kind of have. I wonder how similar or different our backgrounds would be, and if people would even understand that like you could be on the path that you're on and have your background, and I could be on the path that I'm on and have my background, and the difference of male versus female upbringing and how that kind of maybe played a part in it as well. Because like I said, I just think it's often forgot that like people maybe have like 10 or 15 extra thoughts a day that nobody knows about. And that's like, lowballing it. So with that, yeah, now you can explain the modest is hottest thing, because I wanted to get that information out of the way first. So people know that you are on that side and you have the explanation. So now you can explain it.
Thank you, Matt. So like similar to many other grown adults' reactions, please go watch the second interview with Sex Reimagined. I opened up, maybe not for the first time on one of our episodes, but specifically to our interviewees. Love them. I said the phrase, I was born and raised in the Bible Belt. I've had to deconstruct and deprogram from this ideal of modest is hottest that was kind of beaten into my brain in high school. And their eyes got wide. They like physically moved back, like they were shocked. They are not the first, specifically women in my life, that have had that reaction to modest is hottest. What is modest is hottest? Modest is hottest was a movement in high school that was predominantly church related. That there were a core group of kids that went to one church. They had youth group every Wednesday. And it was a teaching of this church. And also, because I went to a different church, a non-denominational church, it was represents a general theme of women, of purity culture, of sexuality, sexual expression that was ingrained into me from a very young age. Modest is hottest is the ideal that my understanding and my experience with this teaching is you are only a valuable woman. You are a God-fearing woman. You are more desirable to the type of man that will lead you in a godly marriage if you are modest. Not just in your clothing, in your thoughts, in the media you consume, in the posts you make online, in the friendships that you have, in the topics of conversation you abide by. All of those things at face value, not necessarily problematic. The problematic part comes in when we're teenagers, we inevitably split up, fess up, whatever, like I did many times in high school, many times, and still continue to do many times. The reaction is more continued beating into your brain that modest is hottest, that you are only a desirable woman, you are only you're only valuable to the culture, to the church culture, to whatever, if you are modest. As an adult, I'm like Matt, I had girls that were showing up with cross rings on their.
Hold on, wait. What do you mean? Like, is this still part of the modest is hottest explanation, or is this just like
Yes.
Okay.
So just as a general like culture explanation in my high school, there were girls that were walking around in like giant shirts that said modest is hottest. And it was all only girls that ever wore modest is hottest merch. T-shirts, I think I saw a hat or two. But these were also several of the girls that would come to school wearing like, promise rings to Jesus kind of stuff, which is not inherently, we're not being very clear. We're not shaming the church. We're not doing anything. We're just simply, sharing our experiences with it. But with that culture came so much shame. Now as an adult in therapy, I didn't understand what it was, but now with my new therapist, we've highlighted and hit the nail on the head that there's so much shame present.
Hold on. All right.
Go ahead.
Well, you're getting into like the questions part of it, and
that's fine.
Less the explanation of like where the, so like what age do you remember starting going to church and like youth group and all that kind of stuff?
So my mom died when I was 14. I was probably 15 when I started going to church regularly with my best friend. And then I was about 17 when I started going to youth group at this other church where I was very present around this modest is hottest culture because I was dating a boy that liked to go to youth group on Wednesdays and party throughout the weekends, which I also did. So there's no shame behind that at all.
So that's the thing I want to touch on later. But so how old do you think I was when I like started going to church?
I would say I honestly don't know. My best guess is that you had to go as a kid.
Yep. I was born and raised in the church. I grew up Southern Baptist, if you could believe that. So I remember my earliest memories of childhood were church on Sunday, vacation Bible school all summer, like all those things. And those are some of like my, like, I don't want to say core memories, but like my super strong memories growing up. And I remember, getting baptized super serious, where I had to exhibit a ton of understanding before I was allowed to even make the decision to start the process of getting baptized. And I remember, going to church and hearing the, purity culture, even from a young age. And I remember the purity rings, which, like I said, it's a thing I want to touch on a little bit later. But I think that at looking at me now, you would assume that maybe that was never a thing, and that if it was, then I was forced to go to church, but I sat with my dad and we cut up the whole time, and my mom just wanted to go. But if you could believe this, both of my parents are ultra religious, and I still get almost probably weekly text messages from at least one of them that is like, well, just pray on it and, read your Bible and this, that, and the other thing, even though that's not necessarily what I do anymore. So, like I said, it's just so interesting. And, with growing up in the church, I had two older sisters who also grew up in the church, obviously throughout that. So I definitely saw a lot of the purity culture, and anything that they went to, I also went to. So I heard it, and I heard it from them. True love waits and all that kind of stuff was a big part of that. And, I think when it comes to, the judging the book by its cover, now I can have these conversations that I have, and I host this podcast and everything. But the thing that I think is different about me, and my mom kind of said it in the episode that she, the interview that you had, I've always been a challenger to a social setting or if somebody tells me a set of facts, I cannot take it as that's fact without some sort of proof. And for better or worse, because it's hurt me a lot of times just as much as it's helped me, I would say, when I do that, people think I'm putting down what they're doing, or I'm being, disrespectful or combative to whatever. And it's like, genuinely, I just want to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So if me asking you a question makes you defensive and you respond a certain way, then that tells me I don't need to subscribe to what you're saying, because it's not necessarily like, you're not explaining it in a way that makes sense to me. And when I ask you about it, you can't explain it. You just get mad, which means it's like, okay, well, whatever. I had a pastor who, in all honesty, like, for the time was probably progressive, but it didn't seem that way then. It just seemed like he would give the message while also explaining why you should be this thing or do this thing. And I used to take to heart a lot of what he said, because he never said it in a politician way, if that makes sense. Like, if you can, and I feel like a lot of churches, especially from what I would imagine your experience is, and in this area, it's very like political in the way that it's delivered. Like, it's not a conversation you're having with 150 people out in a congregation. It's a direct message to the minds and hearts, air quote, of this congregation in front of you. And when you start doing that, I think it has a different level of power, because you're up at a pulpit. And I'm curious for you, if when you started going, because you went at a later age, if it was a culture shock, or if it was like, I'm taking this in because I'm here and have nothing else to do. So like, you absorbed it more like a sponge, as opposed to like getting plunged into cold water.
It was little column A, little column B. I started going with my friend Kayla. Shout out. She's still one of my best friends. I love her a lot. We started going to a church. I got serious about it when I was later at 15 years old. I started going with her because I loved her. I got to spend more time with her and not be at home with my grieving father and grieving sister, and just like a new family dynamic. It was 100% an escape. But I also, after losing my mom in such a tragic, dramatic way at 14, I was trying to find sense in the senseless. I was like, this had to happen for a reason. And there's this higher power. So like, what's the deal here, homie? So I tried to figure that out, but it was more so just, even as a teenager, I would sleep over at my friend Kayla's house on Saturday, and then go to church on Sunday, and then they dropped me back off at home. So I got to like hang out and be with her family and her parents specifically at that age. And even now continue to be like, I said when I got married that I've had a great privilege of having like stand-in moms after mine passed away. Kayla's mom was definitely that for me. And I'm like, well, if Emily does this and she's like a stand-in mom and a big, like, role model for me in my life, like, of course, why wouldn't I be doing this? So, yeah, that's why I started going. Yes, part of it was a culture shock. I was in a very small community church where we had, a very wonderful older pastor. I vividly remember around this time, there was a woman from the community that came in for the first time to church. She joined us in church for the first time. The pastor started going on a very homophobic tangent about what the Bible says about homosexuality, and she actually got up and left. And there were mutterings and musings inside. And I elbowed one of the ladies that I still adore, but was another stand-in mother figure for me at the time. I said, what just happened? Like, something happened. She was like, she got up and left. She got up and left church. We'll pray for her. Man. So it was like a very big, and I was just confused by that and the general reaction, and was just a lost, grieving teenager, but still was like, observing things. I was like, this is weird.
So do you still go to church? Like this is there's a follow-up question. I just wanted to.
I sure the fuck do not. I
All
also have
right.
concerns that if I walked into a church, I would spontaneously combust.
That's fair. What age do you think I was when I stopped going to church?
Ooh, good question, dude. I would guess you stopped going to church when you were out of your mom's house at whatever age that was. If it was like 18 or 19.
I moved out at 17 for the record, but I stopped going to church when I was 15 for the exact reason that you just explained. We moved when I was like 14 from Maryland to here, and we started going to churches around here. And I remember sitting in this church, and it was the first time that I felt like I was being talked at, not talked to. Mm-hmm. And the people had so much more judgment in their environment. And it was always so funny because parents would talk to my mom, and we're obviously new because we just moved here. And my mom is like, I mean, again, ultra religious, ultra churchgoer, like, so she was deacon and all that kind of stuff. And like, always, like I helped run soundboards and stuff. Like we were involved in the church. And I just remember sitting there one day and I was listening, trying to hear, the sermon and resonate with it. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, I get what you're saying, but you're saying it in such a way that like, it almost sounds like you're telling me what to do, not relaying a message to me. Mm-hmm. And if you're telling me what to do, I have a problem with authority, and that's not right. And I thought back to like my pastor that I grew up listening to, and I never felt that. Like I said, he sounded progressive, and I can't ever remember any time something that would be like it condemns another person. He would always start out with, the sin is the problem, not the person, and that is always for them to come to terms with when they meet God. It is not for us to judge. So if you're out there judging, then you are in the wrong. And then he would say whatever he was going to say. And I just remember thinking, like, this doesn't feel like that. And then I would go to school, and like you said, you have friends that are partying on the weekends and this, that, and the other thing, maybe smoking a little greenery, all this kind of stuff. And then I would go to church on Sunday, and those same kids are sitting there upright and dressed up and all this stuff, and their parents think they're just upstanding citizens. And it's like, man, that kid was the one that was like bringing the alcohol for that kid, and that kid was the one that was smoking with those kids, and I was just like a witness to like the fact that it happened because I heard about it. I wasn't even at this party. I just heard all of the stories on Monday. So why the fuck are you like coming like? And then I started watching the way that these people looked at my mom, and then looked at my sisters, and then hearing the drama. And like, I didn't grow up hearing drama in my church. And I started thinking like, I don't know that I can be a part of this situation. And if this is what church is, and if this is what religion is, I don't know that like I've understood it the way that I thought I did. So I would read my Bible. I used to do a Bible verse a day, and I would open it, flip to a page, point to it, and that was the one that I needed to hear that day. And like I did that, like, I want to say religiously, but not ironically religiously, just like consistently. And I was like, man, maybe I just need to do that more. And I told my mom, with like the most fear I've ever had, Mom, I don't think I'm going to go to church with you on Sunday. Is it okay if I stay home? I'll read my Bible. I'll do whatever. But like, I don't think I want to go to that church. She was furious the first time. So I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go. And then the second time I was like, hey, I really don't want to go. And I was afraid to tell her why I didn't want to go. And, to me, hearing people's experiences in churches, and it always seems around 15, 16, 17, maybe 18. That's either when they get all in or all out. And for me, it was like, I couldn't sit there and feel confident and comfortable while everybody's sitting in this room being told not to judge because judgment is for God, while they're all sitting there judging each other. And they're going to go out and talk about whoever in the grocery store when they go out after church to, do their errands, and they're going to stand in the line and talk shit. And it's like, you're a fucking hypocrite. And if you're a hypocrite, I am not a fucking party to this, so I don't want to be. And I was like, you know what? I don't think that this is for me anymore. So I bounced. But I think, again, for you jumping in, it seems interesting.
I did not have that realization of the hypocrisy until I was a sophomore in college. So I commend you for having that realization before I did.
Yeah.
And I'm also so deeply sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry. Because it sounds like the first church with the progressive pastor was a good community for you and, a good experience. And you are not the first person and not going to be the last that I have a similar conversation like with this too, or like this with, because the hypocrisy and it's interesting how a whole church and the culture of a church can do that and hurt people. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry that happened to you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, it's one of those things where, like I said, as long as I can remember, I've been a challenger of ideas. Mm-hmm. And I like to flash forward a little bit in this conversation. Being able to have the conversations that I have is because I've always been able to see the other side of a story and not just my own perspective, my own view of it. And I felt like a lot of what was happening was, this is the view we have to have. And if you're telling me I have to have this, but also like the contextual evidence says all I'm supposed to do is walk my path and let mm-hmm. everybody else walk theirs, because that's not for me to decide. It's not for mm-hmm. me to judge. It's for me to try and be as devout and, holy as I can be, regardless of what everybody else is doing, because mm-hmm. it's not for me. And when it stopped being about that, it started to like make me feel dirty, and thinking that like you were made to feel dirty because you couldn't consume a content or you couldn't whatever. It seems strange. And this is the story that you were kind of like getting ready to say, and I had to stop you. Mm-hmm. But like my mom, I remember one Christmas, I wanted a car magazine, and I asked for like 4 different car magazines, hoping, like as a kid, you shoot for like 15 and hope to get just like 1 or 2, because you don't care which ones. So like, just like playing the odds, I guess. So I got a Road and Track magazine. I was super excited, car little kid at that point. I maybe was like 7 or 8, maybe 9. And it was like Road and Track. It is like doctor's office, waiting room magazine material that's like super appropriate for everybody. And when I opened it up, one of the first pages had scribbles on it, and I was like, oh, that's weird, but I'm a little kid, so I don't know. And then I like start thumbing through it, and some of the pages are a little like waxy. And then I realized my mom had taken a Sharpie, and any woman of any kind in this magazine was scribbled out. And I was like, what the heck? And then I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, you're not getting no smutty car magazines. And I was like, Mom, it's a Road and Track. I don't care what magazine it is. You're not getting and I was like, okay, I just don't understand. She's like, you're lucky I even got that thing. And I was like, whoa, like no idea. So, flash forward, like that was the like, level of removal from content that I like grew up with. And it was always so like, if something happens on TV, you got to leave the room, you got to cover your eyes, whatever. And I don't know if you knew this or if anybody else out there knew this, but for a lot of people now, when a friend or like, especially in like more like intimate friend gatherings, when there's a show of affection, like a hug or a kiss between people and you look away, they've linked that to covering your kids' eyes and watching movies and watching TV. So they've learned that that's a thing that you just like, you look away at. And I think that's so psychologically fucked that you've trained your brain to do that.
It's shame.
Exactly. It's shame. So, like I said, flashing forward and then now flashing back to, you said purity culture and the like modest is hottest went as far as content. What kind of things were you like steering away from because you were like, ooh, I can't like, I'm not supposed to like that. So I'm not going to even, like, I'm not saying you didn't read Harry Potter, but like, what things were you like maybe less excited about that might have been things that everybody else was excited about because of this? Do you have any?
My issue was that I was a fence sitter, and I was in that stage of my life, specifically talking about high school, where I was at that point where I was either going to be all in or I'm not doing this shit. Toxic relationship, craziness, grief, whatever. Fast forward to college, there were several things that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go to these parties anymore. Like, I just really need to fight these urges. Like, I have to be very modest, and I'm really trying hard to be a godly woman and follow this path. But especially here in college, I went all in college, Matt. Like, I paid thousands of dollars to go on a summer project where we lived in Tampa, Florida for 10 weeks. And we worked at Busch Gardens down there. We lived in a hotel, a bunch of college kids all together. And every week we would go out and evangelize on the beach. Mm-hmm. Like, I was all in, dude. I was trying to gain approval from the leadership. So I didn't really I wasn't burning the brain cells to figure it out. I was just following and doing what everybody else was doing. And signing up for yet another Bible study, signing up for yet another youth night. I was going to our weekly gatherings. I was going to like the college equivalent of youth group on Wednesday nights. I had Bible study on Tuesday nights. I was going to our church on Sunday, where I was getting girls' fellowship dinners on Friday nights so that we could just hang out. And like, very much I have to be ingrained in this culture completely, because everything else is just so bad and will just steer me down the wrong path. And I will just, I will not be a good, respectful, godly woman. It's all trials. It was insane though.
Yeah.
You said you challenged ideas. I have some challenging ideas as well, but we can wait on that part.
So like I said, me and Courtney have been together for a really long time. And again, this is where, like, when we have these conversations, and the way that you and your opinion kind of came across about things were, as far as I was concerned, it always seemed like you just assumed I was, always super open and super like able to have these conversations. And I wasn't. It was definitely a thing I had to learn. And my rebellion was oversharing and wanting to be a part of inappropriate conversations, because I had been forced to repress any of those things for so long that like I said, I moved out when I was 17. So like at that time in my life, I was like, oh, I can throw parties and I can drink and I can do all these other stupid things because I'm free. And, I'm going to read my Bible because I can have a relationship with God in my own way and nobody can tell me anything. And I'm on my own now to do that. So when me and Courtney got engaged, she wasn't religious. She, her favorite line is from the movie Pitch Black. Vin Diesel says, you think I, like a baby that was, discarded in the trash can with a cord around his neck could, survive and not believe in God, this, that, and the other thing. And then goes on to say, I absolutely believe in God. I just hate the fucker. And that's her line, her favorite line, because of her life experience. So when
I fucking love you, Courtney.
So when we got together, that was like almost a shock to me. And it was almost like a, not deal breaker, but like a yellow flag, if you will, an orange flag or whatever they call them. Because faith was still important to me at that time, because I was still trying to have faith on my own, in my own way. And when we got engaged, our wedding rings actually have crosses on flanking either side of her stone, but like my band has 3 crosses around it. We don't wear them anymore because we got like fancy silicone rings and times have changed. But I got that because even though she didn't believe the way I wanted her to be protected and have, some sort of Christ-like thing to carry with her from me. And I thought it was super interesting in like hindsight that she was able to do that and able like and accepted that part of me. And then like flash forward now and like, you know, we don't wear them. They're in a drawer, they're in our respective jewelry boxes, and it's just kind of a thing. But, you know, I'm curious for you now, do you have any like sort of, I guess, religious practice or thing that you still carry because that is still a part of you in a way, even if it's not the same part of you? Or is it all like in a backyard bonfire ash pit somewhere?
The answer is no.
No, you don't have it, or no, it's not a burn pit.
No, I do not have any religious practice. So I mentioned I got very ingrained in the culture my sophomore year of college. This is also the same spring semester that I met my now husband, father of my children, who I've been with for over a decade. You said earlier, the sin is the problem, not the person. Mm-hmm. And this is when I was starting, when I started dating my husband. He was Catholic. I was non-denominational. I was involved in a non-denominational organization at college. I immediately had friends that I loved and trusted, female friends, say, "Who is this new boy? He sent you flowers on your birthday. Oh, he's Catholic? You absolutely cannot date him or be with him at all." And I was like, okay, why is that? He just sneezed. You hear him? Thanks, Luke. I was learning about the deeper theology of the Bible, egalitarianism, all very complicated theory parts of the Bible, and I started to find parts of the culture that I didn't like and that I was confused by, because the Bible said one thing, but we as a culture were doing something different.
Something different.
You said the sin is the problem, not the person. Part of this project, all 100% tying back to this modestest, hottest purity culture. We are living with other college-age kids for 10 weeks at a hotel with a pool. It was a very strict fucking policy that all women had to have on a modest swimsuit. Mm-hmm. Like, very, very strict. And at this point, I'm out of my fucking dad's house. I'm a grown-ass woman. I'm a grown-ass adult. I turned 20 that summer. So I was 19 at that point. But I was like, I literally vividly remember looking at my mentor at the time, who was my Bible study leader. I said, "You're telling me that the girls have to dress like nuns at the pool and the boys get to just run around shirtless, because they're going to be led astray if they see my hips?"
Yeah.
And she just said, yes. And from that point forward, I said, okay, if the sin's the problem, not the person, why aren't we allowing women to be comfortable and then having a larger conversation about the men's reaction and monitoring their modesty? Why am I supposed to be submissive and not want to lead my brothers in Christ astray, when the larger conversation maybe should be about, baby, don't have lustful eyes for a woman that, for all women or any women. Why are we censoring me for thee? There begins the downfall. There's a lot more. But whatever. It was, I do not currently have any religious practices. I do not shame anybody that does. There are parts and aspects of Catholicism that I have embraced. I have obviously in law enforcement culture, St. Michael is a patron saint of law enforcement. I have a St. Michael and a St. Christopher emblems on my visor in my car. Patron saint of travelers, patron saint of law enforcement. Just in moments where I just need a little bit of strength, But I do not have any religious practices. my family, we don't have any religious practices. And my husband and I have actually had conversations about what are we going to do when our kids inevitably come home from school someday and say, who's Jesus? And Luke and I have different perspectives. They're going to go out into the world and find their own perspectives. We both agree. We're just going to explain our perspective and trust that they're smart enough and love them and support them through whatever personal convictions it is that they set, whether they are the same or different, or they're going to be all in and go to a church project themselves all summers of fucking college. All right, cool. Let's do it, dude. So yeah. What about you, Matt? You going to church these days?
No. Well, I mean, I already kind of said, I have a, like, my relationship with God is like, I don't want to say private, but like private as in like, I talk to God when I choose to talk to God, or if I choose to, or how I choose to. And I've, since, expanding my mind, I guess, on all of these different areas. And then like, there's an interview with Sunshine and all that kind of stuff where we talk about it. But for me, it's less about organized religion and more about faith as a whole, faith as a construct, I guess. And to have faith in the fact that like I always think it's funny because like Vikings believed in fate and how everything was fated. So even if you choose to do this thing, it doesn't matter whether it's the wrong or the right thing, because in the end, it's the right thing because it was fated to be. Mm-hmm. And if Christianity kind of adopts God has a plan, and you're all you're doing is walking this path that God laid out in front of you because he already knows what you're going to do. Yep. Then it has to in root be the same thing. So for me, if that's the level of thinking and that's the way that you are willing to accept it, that if you have a relationship with God, whatever that looks like, because again, we said and established that we believe that it's up to the individual, your path is still your path. And if in the end, God knows all and plans all, then it doesn't matter what either of us choose to do or don't choose to do. And I just come back to the, I maybe don't read my Bible as much as I used to. There's a couple of verses that I always come back to, I guess, in a way. Like, my name is Matt on purpose. I was named after so like that was always like a part of who I am. And it's at my, like I said, I don't want to call it a core memory, but it's still part of my core, where like faith is always going to be a little voice back there where I can't turn it completely off volume wise. But the things that I take from religion and faith and the Bible and Christianity and all that kind of stuff is always to be righteous and to stand up for others and to try and be the best human for humans' sake, because that's all we can do. And on the outside chance that there is a heaven, I'd rather know that I did everything I could do, not to get into heaven, but because it matters not what's after this. I have no idea. So I think when it comes to, religion, I just want to throw it out there that we're not bashing religion. No. And if you've made it this far and you're like pissed off because we're just like bagging on your faith, that's not what it is. It's two people's experience about the culture that is faith, and the conversation playing out in front of you is one that almost, in my opinion, I felt needed to happen for Kaitlin and I to have a better understanding of when I pitch a topic. It's not I'm pitching a topic to make her uncomfortable. It's not that I'm pitching a topic to put her in a box to say some stuff she doesn't want to say. It's because it's the topics that people are requesting. It's the topics that are doing well. And it's conversations that like we as two adults should be able to have. And if we can't have it, then we need to have the conversation on why we can't have it and understand and accept, that thing. And call back to today's timeline episode. That's one of the things that Leah and Dr. Willow Brown talked about, was how they know they can trust each other's no. And it's not about trusting each other's no because they have some sort of, like rubric or algorithm that they put all their choices through. It's about understanding that, like, I know where you're coming from. And if you're saying you don't want to do this, then I accept that because I know you wouldn't cross a boundary for me, just like you wouldn't want me to cross a boundary for you. So, when it comes down to faith in general, you're all entitled to whatever faith you want to have. You're all entitled to, like, if you want to be a Satan worshiper, like, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me because it's not for the basis of my being. As far as what I took from all of this was, it ain't for me to judge. So I don't judge anybody. I mean, if you're wearing Crocs, I might judge you because they're fucking stupid, but that's about it.
Is this a bad time to tell you that I just got Crocs this week?
No, it's I said that because, like, I assumed you probably had Crocs, and it was more about making it more funny and offending people on a thing that was way more important. But no, like I said, I think what it comes down to is Kaitlin and I getting a better understanding, and I really wanted to have this conversation because I felt like on some level you maybe misunderstood where I came from. And to me, clearing it up, like, these conversations with a homie like that are important, but also, like, I've heard you talk about, evangelizing on a beach and, living through the Bible Belt and all those things. And for me, I don't necessarily talk about any of that, not because I don't want to or because, like, for any other reason, but, like, it doesn't matter because I'm willing to have this conversation because I know for me, my limits are this. And if I don't want to talk about it, I don't have to talk about it. And I want you to know that I, as your friend, but more importantly, as a fellow human being, like, when I do like making you squirm a little bit and making you uncomfortable in some of the conversations, but only because I can tell that, like, you want to have that conversation, and maybe there's some door that just, like, cracked open in your head that maybe now is like, ooh. And that means that when I asked that question, when I said that thing, or when that topic got brought up, maybe a listener also had that door crack. And I keep telling you that you almost embody a lot of the people that, those guests are talking about, are hoping to reach. And you probably hold more of the opinion that's more prevalent than I do. And with listeners of this particular podcast, I'm sure there's a lot of them that are like, oh man, I relate to Kaitlin so much because her story is my story. And I love that.
So I was thankful that you wanted to have this conversation, first and foremost, not because it's supposed to be a religious or faith bashing hour, but because this is also a kind of difficult topic to talk about. So first and foremost, thank you for allowing this to be a safe space for this to happen. Purity culture, repeated, like, victimization and hate and harming people is the larger part of this conversation. In non-denominational faith, the saying and the ideal is that it is a relationship, not a religion. Still, I have that type of perspective. So, it is what it is. The larger issue and the larger theme from the modest and hottest purity culture is, we've said it before in this in this episode a couple times, but shame. The shame that I am here now as a 30-fucking-year-old woman, married for almost 4 years with the same man for over 10, and with expressions of sexuality, with immodest topics of conversation, with revealing outfits, depending on the context. There is so much shame. There is so much bandwidth and brain cells of my thought process that is eaten up by shame. Homies, if you need a resource, Brene Brown has a couple TED Talks about shame. I'm thankful for my therapist, and I'm thankful for you, Matt, because first and foremost, yes, this is a safe space for me to have the difficult conversations that I, quite frankly, otherwise would not have. 2, if you listen to the episode that just aired today, I think it was Dr. Willow had some type of, or no, maybe it was Leah who said a very specific comment that made my cheeks totally turn red.
Yeah.
Not an issue. Love that. Am totally encouraged and want to continue to have those moments, because it was a very visceral physical reaction that I had to sit down and do a little bit of introspection about what the heck, why was that so shocking to me? Pun intended.
Yeah.
But to have these types of conversations, to push yourself, to get the intellectual stimulation that I have for the 1 hour of my week that I constantly have carved out for creative and intellectual expression. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for our listeners. The whole point of all of this is to just try and do better and be better. But to also be nice to ourselves, because we're trying to heal from past issues. And this one is a big hurt for me that I am still, quite frankly, trying to learn how to heal from.
Yeah. If there's one thing that I hope to push as the next, evolution in my life goes, is trying to help people heal from shame, trying to help people lose their shame, and trying to show people that on the other side of that is a whole world with brighter colors, because you're not afraid of it. And that doesn't mean, one of the things I think a lot of people, and this specifically, as far as topics that we've tiptoed around on this episode, or topics that I would, try and not steer towards, because I don't want to put you in that position. But people think a lot of times where if somebody's telling you to lose your shame, they want you to be this wild, promiscuous person. And I don't mean promiscuous in just a sexual way, but just in general, you're going out and doing all these other crazy things, because you can lose your shame while still deciding not to do a thing.
Yes.
Just because hearing the word orgy doesn't make you go, ooh, it doesn't mean that you have to then go have one or participate in one or go watch. That's not what it is. Losing shame is realizing I don't have to be afraid of that thing, because that thing can't hurt me. That thing is not as scary or demonized as it was originally made out to be. And it's, as Shrek would say, like an onion. You peel back layers of it and you realize, oh, I didn't realize that shame is why I felt that way. I didn't realize that shame is why, instead of, making my coffee before I get completely dressed, I have to get fully dressed to the toe before I go down there. Because what if, God forbid, somebody walked past my window at 5 o'clock in the morning and they can see my bra strap? Those are the things that are pushed on people that cause shame in a way. We talked about the covering your eyes when, somebody kisses on TV or something happens, and then you grow up with a complex of not being able to look at a couple kiss without feeling uncomfortable or awkward. Just because you feel awkward and it is awkward doesn't mean that you have to be
I'm officially nuking the phrase "modest is hottest" from this podcast. You will never hear me. I'm not going to say never. You will very likely never hear me say "modest is hottest" ever again. I'm changing the phrase, and I'm claiming ownership of what all of that was for me and continues to be. It's no longer modest is hottest. It's hottest is hottest. Just do you.
Yeah.
Love yourself, embrace yourself. You are not dirty or lesser than or weak by embracing anything that is not seen to be modest. And we're not just talking about sexuality here. It's just very much ingrained into young women specifically about sexuality, modesty, whatever. Hottest is hottest, and you can run and tell that.
Yeah, there you go. I will leave you with shame dies in safe places. So continue to make safe places for your friends, continue to have those conversations. And if anybody has anything that they want to, wring my neck about in this episode or agree with or whatever, you can always find us at the Homes Room Pod at Gmail or on Instagram or on YouTube.
Write us. Yep, tell us your thoughts.
Yep. Do whatever you got to do. The point is that I'm not going to judge you one way or the other. And if you are a person of faith and this episode offended you, I am sorry that you are offended. However, maybe think about why you're offended. Maybe think about what makes you offended and see if there's a root cause for you and not for because of what we said. Our experiences are our experiences. Well, no, we're not wrong, because our experiences are our experiences.
Oh, okay.
Our experiences are just as legitimate as their experience. Whether or not they want to agree is up to them.
Preach.
And with that, bye.
The bell is about to ring. If you want to drop us a voice message or simply ask a question, you can do that by clicking the link in the show notes below. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It helps more people find us. Theme music by Kinsey. More music available on Spotify. Remember, every day is a class. Go learn something.